frame up this question of dealing with overwhelm, and I'm going to go into a bunch of facts about stress and stress response, some things that, some analogies that might be helpful, talk about some strategies, and then I'll open it up for Q&A if anybody has something specific they want to talk about they didn't address. But I've been taking notes from my conversations with people for the last few weeks and seeing kind of what the big struggles are and what mindsets are. So to kick it off, kind of framing the conversation around what is going on, why, or how to deal with the sense of like overwhelm, or to flip it like, oh, I can't get myself to go to bed on time or exercise or eat right or whatever the thing is, whatever the struggle is. And I want to kick it off with a kind of a fitness analogy, and it is it's adjusting expectations to stress. Now, if anybody has worked out at Training for Warriors in the summer, it can get a little warm in here, you know, so maybe it's like 90, 95, and some people, their performance actually goes up a little bit. They like the heat, they're not as tight, you know, it feels good, it's a good feeling. But when it gets up to 100, 105, then everybody's starting to feel it. Now, if the gym was 100, let's say it was like hot yoga, or, you know, 120, 130, like really hot, like physically kind of dangerous to be in. If you were training in that environment, you wouldn't have the same expectations. And it didn't matter if you did, because if you tried to squat 100 pounds and that was your previous max, you might be able to squat 80 pounds, you know, if you're sweating bullets, if your body is pushed through the thermal stress of a gym that is a high temperature, is that like 120 degrees. You could do it, you would not get the output that you would get if you were having a direct thermal stress in your life, in your training environment. So my postulate, or the idea that I want to try and give you, is that the body is feeling a tremendous amount, your body is feeling a tremendous amount of stress, of emotional, mental stress, somatic loading, somatic stress, as it's sometimes referred to medically. But it is the same as if you were in a very, very, very physically hot environment, same level of pressure, but we don't have any of the sensations, the external sensations that we do when we're in that very hot gym. So you may not be physically sweating, you know, you might not be grinding your teeth, you may not say to yourself, I'm afraid, but there's this pressure. You're going through changes. You know, some people are working from home, they've never done that before. Some people have had financial stress, they've never had to deal with that or haven't had to deal with that in a long time. Some people are now teachers and stay-at-home professionals. Some people are looking for work. Some people have had their whole routines upended. And some people are actually feeling like this is the first time where they've had time to themselves, and they're kind of excited about it. There's a whole amalgam of different conditions and possibilities that you might be feeling right now, or you might be going through, and they're affecting each of us differently. But in terms of like just raw like pressure and raw stress from your nervous system, it's pretty consistent. So we're all feeling this very, very, very stressful situation. But what we haven't done is we haven't modulated our expectations about what we're going to output based on it, based on this new environment. And that doesn't mean that you can't have expectations or have high expectations. Doesn't mean you're powerless to do anything, but it just means you have to have a perspective, a holistic perspective on what success looks like, what your practice looks like, and what your next steps are, specifically around your health and fitness. So what can you do to help adjust your expectations? Now, in the context of fitness, like training, nutrition, sleep, food, movement, when we're in the gym and you're training, and I have, I introduce this idea to people when they start working with us for the first time. It's like the goal isn't to be at 100% of your maximum effort every day. Your goal is to be maybe at 90%, it's some of the high intensity drills, but maybe between the 80 and 90%. So feeling like an 8 or a 9 on a scale of 1 to 10 is a good place to be training consistently. Now, if you're still doing that fitness piece, but you take the temp of the gym to 120, now you want to drop that training zone. You want to drop that sensation to be like a 6 or a 7, or something that is much less difficult for you and doesn't seem like as arduous, because now in the context of this stressful environment, the impact is going to be so much greater on the demand in your body. So just from a physical perspective, if you're doing your daily workouts or your every other day splits, or however you're doing it at home, your expectation on what high output is might want to go back a couple of steps for a while and get used to doing consistent output, like at a 6 or a 7, so that you can do consistent training and not feel just beaten down and fatigued and destroyed. So giving yourself that sort of that bandwidth, that neurological bandwidth. Now, from a habits perspective around sleep, around your nutrition, let's talk about sleep and wake times, because I think this is really valuable too. When let's say that you're working from home, you've never done that before. Now you don't have to commute, so you've kind of got this extra space in the morning, got a large, maybe an hour and a half extra. You're not driving to work, you're not having to change and get ready and do all the things that you're going to do. So you're probably not going to wake up an hour and a half earlier than you used to, you're probably not going to have a 90-minute, morning or self-care routine or self-care process. What I would do is take the time that you'd like to get up in the morning, or that you had been getting up, and just walk it back 15 minutes. So let's say you're trying to give yourself enough time to eat breakfast and meditate or anything like that. You don't want to carve out an hour in your morning immediately. You want to give yourself an extra 15 minutes for a few days or a week. When that becomes pretty easy, an extra 15 minutes. So taking these bite-sized chunks out of your goal, if your goal is to work out in the morning, maybe then once you've gotten up consistently early, you start to work out for 15 minutes, then a half an hour, and then slowly let it escalate and let that build up over time. And that slow and steady change process is going to be a lot more sustainable than saying, all right, I'm going to hit that 7 a.m. workout, every day now, and you haven't gotten up one time before 7 a.m. thus far, right? You want to give yourself a realistic window to acclimate to that new challenge or that stress. So taking that bite-sized chunk even further, let's talk about nutrition. So as always, when you're thinking about your nutrition plan, and by the way, if you have a training plan, you have a nutrition plan, you have a recovery plan, you have all these plans, you may not know what they are, but you're doing them, right? You've got to eat, you got to sleep, you got to move your body, to some degree. So it's just a matter of how deliberate you're being. When you're looking at your nutrition plan, you want to be on offense first, defense second, meaning looking at what to add to your diet, to your nutrition plan before you start to worry about what to take away. So let's say you're closing down the night with a bottle of wine just because you're just stressed out, and that's just how it's going for you. The goal isn't to attack that bottle of wine first. The goal is to go to breakfast and say all right, I need to get on this food situation. So I'm gonna add in a couple of eggs for breakfast, get some healthy fats. I'm gonna cook it in some coconut oil. So now I've got some good stuff going on there. So I'm doing my 3 eggs, coconut oil. So I got 20 grams of protein, got some fat. I'm gonna go ahead and get some potatoes in there. Boom, nice, healthy, hearty country breakfast. And all those things are on plan. Now I'm on offense. So I'm adding calories, adding the energy sources that I need for my brain to work, to feel good, and I'm starting to stack things the deck in my favor. Then I'm gonna go on offense into lunch, offense into dinner, offense into snacking. So I'm feeling, if you're feeling that sensation to eat, you need to eat all day long, great. There's all kinds of stuff you need to eat. Grab some celery, get some nut butter, put that in your gullet, start to get these other things that your body needs and stay on offense. So you don't want to start playing. The reason is if you do it the other way, if you start to go on defense first, you start taking away things. So let's say you're doing a breakfast burrito, and then you're snacking on chips and cookies, and then you have a Coke and a sandwich. If you start to cut out all those snacks and all those calories that you were doing, I'm not saying that those are the best choices, but then now you have nothing. Now you're not eating food. Now you're not eating anything during the day, and so you're in this sort of hangry state, and you think you're being proactive, but inevitably what you're doing is you're just taking away the fuel out of the fire. And it's hard to stay consistent on that plan anyway. So you go on offense, you start to push through, you start to get the things that you need in every meal. So, if you're Steve, you're cooking a whole pig at a time, and you're just chopping up that pork loin, and then you're eating that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But so he's got protein, he's got fat, and then after he's being consistent on that for a week or two, and he's getting in the food that he needs, then you can start to look at dessert, looking at alcohol, looking at snacks like cookies and calorie beverages. And if it makes sense, then you might work on taking some of those things out of there, or maybe even exchanging them one for other things he needs. Because I would venture to guess, having looked at a lot of people's food journals in the last couple of weeks, I venture to guess that there's probably still more you can do on offense than is worth playing defense. Because most of us could still eat more protein, could still eat more greens. Most of us could still hydrate better. Most of us could still get those things in our body that we need to make us feel good before we worry about cutting out any of the beer or the wine or the chocolate covered macaroons or what have you. So offense before defense. And then when it comes to that nutrition piece, also making them small bite-sized changes. So notice I started with just breakfast and working on that. And then when that becomes really easy, working on the next piece. So going in a slow but sure fashion and taking back the day. And when that starts to snowball and get momentum, you're going to have more energy. Your brain's going to be working better anyway, and you're not going to be feeling like you're starving, you're exhausted, and everything's getting taken away from you. So, adjusting expectations, making smaller changes more consistently, working on offense, not defense, and then when it comes to the long-term stress management of the situation, it's dropping in things or kind of refilling your cup or renewing yourself or putting your oxygen mask on first, however you want to say it, but doing the daily things that make you more resilient and lower and increase your adaptivity stress. Because you're not really managing the stress, you're managing your response to stress, and you're becoming better able and better adapted to handle it. So I was just listening to the Model Health Show, which is a great podcast if you just want to nerd out on fitness stuff. It's wonderful. Sean Stevenson has a very sexy voice. So I highly recommend listening to him. But going for walks, taking a 10-minute meditation break, reading physical books, quiet, just getting quiet. Being in nature, there's a Japanese word for nature bath. And I don't know what it is, and I don't want to butcher any Japanese anyway, so I'm not going to try and hit that one. But getting in nature, right? You can still social distance. It could be go for a walk in your neighborhood. Can go to one of our many parks and just get your toes in the dirt, that sort of thing. That immediately stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system and increases your I'm going to butcher the term. It has positive benefits for your hormones, for your brain, and for your body. So the more that you do of these recovery strategies, and I'll post a full list on the Facebook page and in the notes for this video. But there's dozens, if not hundreds, of things that you can do to increase to build up your resilience and resistance to stress, because that's really the long-term game here. We're in this situation, and as the current conditions change and our lives continue to change, we're going to continue to be under a great amount of stress. And building in these practices to increase your resilience is the thing that's going to increase your longevity. It's going to help boost your immune system. I was just reading a report that there's these I got the language wrong, but there's exercise has immune system boosting effects that are really valuable, and exercise also changes the way that your genes are expressed, that your DNA is actually expressed. Changes your hormone profile immediately. You get that those endorphins going on. There's just so many benefits to exercise. My point is not to sell you on exercise. My point is to say there's habits and activities that you can utilize to reduce the feeling of overwhelm and stress while the temperature has been turned up on all of us. So I'm going to review, and then I'm going to take some questions. To review, adjust your expectations, right? We're all in this high temp environment, and we're not capable of the same exact output. Some people are going to be very resilient, some people less so. I'm very heat sensitive. I would just die in this scenario, but we have to adjust our expectations about what performance looks like so that we can make meaningful decisions with our habits and behaviors. And then when it comes to those habits and behaviors, go on offense to get those nurturing foods in, those nurturing habits, and taking on bite-sized chunks. So not trying to, go from a regular junk food diet that you've been on for the last month to then jumping into a keto diet just to kickstart things. That's not the idea. You want to go slow with yourself so that the changes can be sustainable. And then finally, managing your recovery habits so that your resilience increases and improves to stress, so that every day that the effect of that pressure on you is down-regulated, so that you feel more in control, you feel less crazy, you feel less overwhelmed and less helpless, and more centered, more present, and more able and capable to go on offense. I like talking. That was a lot of talking from moi. I will post some details and some lists and some other good tools and resources. Does anybody have any questions about how to apply that, what the hell I'm talking about, who I am, any of the above? Best way to make gains so we don't have to start over. That's a great question. Great question. Gains, and how do you protect them? So Sarah Carlson asks, what's the best way to make gains so we don't have to start over when the gyms reopen? That is, that's a great question. Number one, so you got to use the muscles that you have been building up for so long. So doing strength training while you're in quarantine. You don't need heavy weights. Just yesterday we were doing, what day is it? That's what the quarantine really does. It gets you confused on what day it is. Just yesterday in our strength training program, we're doing eccentrics, so slow push-ups, doing explosive push-ups, doing single leg drills, really increasing the tension on that muscle. And that's what you need to build strength and muscle, is you need high tension. Now it's really easy if you have a 100-pound dumbbell, you have a lot of tension, right? So you don't need to be super creative, right? You just lift and enjoy the process. You gotta be a little bit more creative and a little bit more controlled when you're using your body, but it's all about amplifying the tension that you have. So if you're doing our bodyweight strength training program every day, you're gonna be doing that. And the second piece is sleeping enough and eating enough protein and carbohydrates to build muscle, because those are the two things. Food and sleep are how you build muscle, and that's what you want to be focused on when you're training in this environment, to protect those precious gains. So keep those gains going, Sarah and everybody. You better be getting that training in. I'm doing it, you're doing it. I'm going to continue to be banging the drum on this stuff about structure and habits. We're doing that in the quarantine challenge here at Training for Warriors. I want everybody to continue to focus on those baby steps so that you're not behind the 8 ball when the gym does reopen. Guess what? Everything in this, post-quarantine, no one knows what it's gonna like, but imagine a slow, painful, gentle, painfully slow restoration of your normal life that will actually not ever exactly resemble what you were doing before, but we're gonna slowly, so you just need to continue to be slow with yourself and take those actions now so that when the curtain is revealed and we all look at the sun and are blinded by the light, that you're ready for it and you're resilient and you're not starting from scratch. That's the big thing. That's the big piece. Warriors, I will see you on the interwebs. I will see you in the morning or afternoon whenever you're training and or chatting with me so that we can continue to build muscle, burn fat, feel good, and bring forth the warrior within.